Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond, a safe place where both women and men can come and listen to real people talk about their breast cancer experience and the effects that follow well into survivorship. Hosted by Carrie Madrid, a stage 3 breast cancer survivor and founder of the CARE Project. It's time to Handle with Care.
Here we are back with another episode of Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. My name is Chris Donovan, the co-host here with Carrie Madrid of thecareprojectinc.org. Now, in this episode, Carrie gets to sit down with former NFL player, author, speaker, podcast host, and resiliency expert Devon Still. We're going to hear how he fought for his dreams of making it to the NFL in spite of one obstacle after another, being hurt, and then the biggest obstacle that came when his daughter was 4 years old and was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And they only gave her a 50% chance to survive. Carrie discusses with Devon his playbook for Leah's comeback and how you can benefit from the playbook also. Benefit from the playbook. You can go to Devon's website, stillstrongfoundation.org, for more information while you listen to this great conversation with Devon Still and Carrie Madrid here on Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond.
So before I introduce my special guest for this episode, let me tell you how we got here. So not long ago, I joined the Clubhouse app, and being that I'm a football fan, like I'm really a football fan, 3 brothers, a dad, a stepdad, like I was indoctrinated into football like at age 8. So I popped into this room one night where there was a few NFL players, some former players, some current players, and they were just dropping encouragement and sharing stories about their own mindset and obstacles that they faced. And they fielded questions from the audience. So everyday people, aspiring professional athletes, and so on and so forth. And one of the reasons I was in there was not just because I'm a football fan, but also because my daughter's boyfriend is a kicker. And he had played for the Arizona Rattlers, and then he was playing for the British Columbia Lions in Canada. And with COVID, everything sort of stopped midstream. So me being the mother bear I am, I'm like, come in this room with me. Like, let's listen, just stay encouraged, you know? And in that moment where people were, the professionals were fielding questions, there was someone in the audience that really sounded, I hate to use the word desperate, so I'm going to say defeated. Sounded like they just didn't know if they should quit, and asked the question, how do you stay so encouraged? How do you keep going, if you will? I always use the term keep moving, but keep going. And there was this awkward silence amongst the panel where everybody sort of hesitated for a minute, like, who is going to take this question? And in the previous question, someone jumped in right away. And I was sitting there like, oh, somebody answer this poor person, you know, and the mother in me is like, I feel everything, whether I want to or not. And you said, you know what, I'll take that question. And you poured into that person so much encouragement, knowledge, and genuine like care and love that I really felt the need, like I had to thank you, you know? And so I headed over to Instagram because there's no instant messaging on Clubhouse. And I was like, I'm going to send this man a message and I'm just going to tell him thank you. And then I thought, he's going to think I'm crazy. Like, who's this broad? Like, just sliding in my DMs, right? So anyways, I say all that to say, this is just who I am. I keep it real. And I was like, I got to tell this guy, like, thank you for doing that. Like, oh my gosh. So the man that I'm speaking about is Mr. Devon Still. Thank you so much for joining me today and for not thinking I'm a crazy lady sliding in your DMs.
No. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I got to tell you a funny story. After, I've known about you because I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in 2012. And so when you're in that, I call it cancer land, right? You automatically, it's like when you buy a new car, right? And you buy that new type of car, and then every time you're on the freeway, you see that car and you're like, I never realized there were so many. Same thing with cancer. Once you enter cancer land, either yourself as a patient or as a caregiver, a parent, a child, you notice everybody else's stories. And of course, being that you were an NFL player, you had a ton of exposure. You lived your life out loud with Leah's diagnosis, and I followed it intensely. And then once I got into my near death experiences and all my complications, I had to focus on me. And I kind of, I paid attention when I could, but not as intently. So after I sent you that message on Instagram, I went back and I started kind of rewatching and rereading the story and seeing where Leah's at now. Thank God, cancer free. What, 6 years now?
Yep.
And I looked at your story and I was like, I asked you to be on my show and you said, yeah, I'd love to support. And I was like, oh, really? Like, who am I to get you on my show as a guest? And I realized in that moment that default thinking that I had from trauma and drama in my childhood is always been, you're not good enough, you're not strong enough, you're not smart enough, you're not educated, right? And so when I was diagnosed, I always say cancer saved my life, right? I asked God, what is going to be the purpose of the last half of my life? I was a young mother. My son is your age. He was born in 1989. And I laughed when I looked you up. I was like, 1989, he could be my son. And then I said, oh, good. Now I don't feel so creepy, telling you I'm proud of you and thank you, because that really came from a place of, I really respected what you did for that person. But as I listened to you and I listened to your TED Talk last night and I listened to it on my way driving to my office today, and tears poured down my face, and I never cry. Well, I never used to cry before my diagnosis. I was this tough chick made from hardship, made from, just tough things in my life when I was younger. And so when I read your story and I heard your talk and you talk about coming from that tough neighborhood, right? And against all odds, making it to college, to Penn State, making it, and then having season ending injuries your first year, your second year, and then still pushing through and being resilient, getting you to one of the top players, right? By the time you were in your senior year. Going back then, like, what gave you that drive to push past those injuries and to not quit?
It's an interesting story because for those of you who don't know my story, coming out of high school, I was one of the top prospects in high school football. And I landed over about 50 full scholarships to some of the top universities in the country. And I ultimately decided to go to Penn State. But my first couple of years, it started off rocky. My first year, I tore my ACL, my MCL.
At the same time?
Yep. Normally, when you tear your ACL, the MCL tears as well, unless you're just lucky. But I was crushed when I blew out my knee because I had a chance to play as a true freshman. And with Joe Paterno's football teams, normally, you don't get a chance to play as a true freshman. That's really a time where you get to learn and catch up to speed for collegiate football. But I was doing so good in training camp, I had a chance to break the lineup. And when I blew out my knee, those chances were stripped away from me because I had to spend 9 months in rehab trying to get back. And there were a lot of times.
And that's a long time. 9 months is a long time.
It's extremely long time.
It's a long time. Yeah.
Extremely long time. And, I would hear, people come to me, doctors, teammates tell me that, people don't normally make it back from this type of knee injury. So a lot of this was getting in my head about what they were saying. But I dedicated myself. I said, look, I understand, injuries come with playing football. So if I want a chance to, go out there and play in Beaver Stadium in front of 110,000 fans, I needed to overcome this injury. So that's exactly what I did. I made it back in the 9 months for the following training camp. I was having a good training camp. All I had to do was make it through the last week, the last scrimmage, and I finally get my chance of living out my dream of playing college football. But during this scrimmage, one of my teammates got thrown into my leg and it snapped in half. And I was completely crushed because I had just spent the whole year trying to make it back from my knee injury. And now they were telling me I was out for another year.
Right.
And it crushed me. And I oftentimes thought to myself when I was in my dorm room, is like, why am I even here?
Right.
Like, I get that Penn State is a great school academically, but I didn't come here for academics. That's not the way I was brought up. I came here to play football. And if I can't live out my dream of playing football, what is the point of me being here? So there were times where I felt like I just wanted to give up and then move back home and just say, forget Penn State. But I remember before I made any decisions, I went home for a weekend just to clear my mind. And when I went home, I went to a party with some of my friends. And at that party, I watched somebody get shot in the head and they died. And I remember like his friends like jumping around him and screaming and stuff. And the next day I had to go back up to Penn State. And when I was sitting in my dorm room, I kept replaying what I had saw the night before. And I had told myself, like, this is my why. This is my reason why I got to keep pushing to overcome all these injuries, because I can't continue to allow my family to grow up in this type of environment. I have an opportunity to change all that if I make it back out on the football field and I end up going to the NFL. So I decided to go through the pain today so that my family wouldn't hurt tomorrow, if that makes sense. Like in the times I wanted to give up.
Say it again.
Yeah. I was willing to go through the pain today so that my family didn't hurt tomorrow.
That's right.
So I was willing to go through whatever I had to go through so that one day my family wouldn't have to see the pain. My kids wouldn't see the pain from the environment I grew up in. And when I found a purpose that was bigger than my pain, that's when I was able to push through.
Right. And you know, in listening to your story, well, let's go further than that. So you do make it to the NFL, right? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So ultimately, after I overcame those 2 injuries, I made it back out on the football field. And I want to go back to this in case anybody out there feels the same way, because I know you said that you struggled with the past traumas that you had been through, telling you you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, you're not educated. So that second injury, they told me I was done for the year. And I was crushed. And I really struggled overcoming that injury, going through rehab another year back to back. And I remember it was the last game of the season against Michigan State. And for those of you who don't really understand how college football works, you either have a red shirt year or you can take a gray shirt, which is a medical. And because I had 2 back-to-back injuries, I could apply for a medical gray shirt year, which gives me an extra year on top of the 5 years that you have in order to be a collegiate athlete. So that's the route that the coaches and the doctors was telling me I should go. And if I played a game that second season, then I wouldn't be eligible for that gray shirt. I remember the last game of the season was against Michigan State, and my coach was like, do you want to go out there and play?
Yeah.
And it was only 10 seconds. It was like 20 seconds left in the game.
Oh, my God.
And he was like, do you want to go out there? And I'm sitting on the sideline like, should I just give up this gray shirt or should I go out there and live out my dreams? And I said, you know what? I want to go out there. And he was like, you sure? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I need a taste of this because next year is not promised. I may get hurt again and I'll never get to feel what it's like to actually step out there onto the football field. So even if it's only 20 seconds that I'm out there, I need that taste to give me that motivation to continue to push forward.
Yeah.
So he put me in the game, and I tell you, it was the worst 20 seconds of my life. Like being taken off 2 years of playing football, overcoming those serious injuries. I played terrible.
Yeah.
But the feeling I got from just running out on that field, it gave me that motivation that, look, I was able to overcome this. I finally got a taste of my dream. Now nothing's going to stop me. And then that moment, that it just pushed me forward because by the time I ended up becoming a senior at Penn State, I was the team MVP. I was the captain. I was the Big Ten Lineman of the Year, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I was up for, national awards, and I ended up getting drafted 53rd overall. So it was just like, I wonder if my journey would have went the same way if I didn't take those 20 seconds to experience. Although I knew I wasn't qualified to do it, although I know I wasn't prepared enough to go out there and play at the top level after overcoming all those injuries, the fact that I threw myself out there, it gave me the confidence I needed to push forward. So that's what helped me end up going to
Yeah.
the NFL.
Yeah. Let me share something with you. I have chemo brain, so if I don't say it when it's on my mind, I'll forget it. So this is just a prime example of why your story resonates with me so much. So as I shared, that tape plays in my mind, and it's a constant battle even to this day. Like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, and that's a whole other show that stems from childhood on through. But the story that I have that relates to that 20 seconds, that gamble, if you will, that you took of going out there to give yourself that taste. I sat in this office 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. I was talking to one of my business mentors who is a public speaker and all that. And I said to him, he said, Carrie, you could do so much more. You could do this, you could do that. And I said, look, I'm never going to quit my full-time job because I'm fortunate to work from home and it gives me medical benefits. And I'm so high risk of recurrence. I need my benefits and I need to pay my bills. I'll take a salary for the care project. And then on top of that, I hadn't started the podcast yet, but I said to him, I have so many life lessons that I've learned just through trauma and tragedy in my own life and obstacles. I think I kind of want to go speak to young people. He's like, oh, you could totally do that. You're a great storyteller. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated. I'm not like you. I didn't go to college. I was an 18-year-old mother. I was 18 and a senior in high school when I had my son, Anthony, who's now your age. So I just went to work and I've been grinding ever since. And so I said to him, but I have so much to share, but I don't know. I just kind of threw it out there. And he looked at me and he goes, oh, you're going to do that. And I said, get the hell out of my office. We joked and he left. I am not kidding you. I have the chills every time I tell the story. I swung around to my computer and I opened up my email and I had an email from a group at UCR, UC Riverside here. And they said, we've done some research on you. We found you online and we want you to be our keynote speaker at our annual conference. I said, oh my God, I am not ready for this. I am not prepared. God, I didn't really mean it. Not yet, but I'll tell you what, fast forward, I went on, I had never stepped on a college campus and been in a lecture hall ever. And my first time in, I walked up on stage and I was their keynote speaker and I spoke my truth from my heart about my experience in life. And basically, I shared the story of why do I always feel like I'm not good enough? I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated. Who am I? That's what I always say. Who the hell am I to do that? Right. But in that moment, I got a taste of what I thought I wanted to do. And it was all I needed. And I'm told it was great. I don't remember really everything I said. But when I finished and I walked off that stage, people were on their feet and tears were flowing down their face. And I got multiple messages after that said, oh my God, thank you for sharing your story. And it was just that little taste of what I needed to move forward. And my life has been changed ever since. So I'm so glad you made that choice. Because look at you now. You went on
You
to
know
that.
what's interesting? You know what's interesting that you just said? You said that after that moment is when your life changed forever. A lot of people are confused because they think the change comes before the calling.
Yes.
Like when God puts a calling on your life, it normally comes before you make the change in your life in order to fit that role. And normally that calling is painted on a canvas of chaos.
Yes.
Because usually us as humans, we don't like changing until we're forced to change. So when we go through chaotic moments in our lives, that's really what makes us change, and God can make it change for the better.
Yeah.
And then when you get that calling for your life, when you feel like there has been an anointing placed on your life, then you take the steps in order to change, in order to fit that role. Because if you look at our journey, I know I'm fast forwarding here. When my daughter got diagnosed with cancer, I wasn't ready to be a spokesperson for childhood cancer. I knew absolutely nothing about childhood cancer or what families go through. But because I went through that chaotic moment of my life, like I said, God painted that calling on my life in order to shed light and be a champion, be an advocate for families who are battling childhood cancer. So I know there's a lot of people out there who feel like who they are now doesn't really fit the purpose that they feel they have for their life. And that's okay. All you have to do is accept the calling, and then along that journey, it will be revealed to you of the changes you need to make in order to fit that role. But many people don't answer the calling because they don't feel like they fit the role.
Yeah,
And I suffer with
absolutely.
that too. because I was an
Absolutely.
introvert when I started speaking. My SB speech, that was the first time I really spoke in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it made me step outside of my comfort zone to really find out who I was and what I was capable of doing. But if I didn't put myself in that situation, I never would have became the person that I am today.
Absolutely.
So it's really about
Absolutely.
overcoming that fear.
I always tell my friends and my board members always go, I'm having a big bright idea. And they go, oh shit. Like now, because I'm like, I don't know how, like starting my organization, right? Who am
Right.
I? I was a broke single mom. I mean, I was just getting by. My best friend was also a single mom of 4 daughters. Between the two of us, we had 7 kids. And I just said, you know what? We gotta make a difference. Like we got to do something. There's people that are choosing between groceries for their teenagers or $100 copay for chemo.
Yeah.
These are people that I met when I was in treatment. And she was like, okay, but what are we going to do? Like, we barely get by. I was like, it doesn't matter. If we can make it, someone else can. And this is like the speaking thing that I talked about. I told one of my best friends, Nicole, I said, I feel like I keep having this reoccurring thought and dream that I'm supposed to go do something, right? And I always say it's kind of like God taps me on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey, you know that thing you've been thinking about? Yeah, I'm gonna need you to go do that." And I go, "Yeah, who am I? I'm not doing that. I can't do. Who am I?" Right? And then I get popped upside the head and I'm like, okay, I'll think about it, And then something chaotic comes up in my life and knocks me to my knees. And I'm like, I got it. Okay, here I go.
Yeah.
And I told Nicole one time, I said, I keep having this weird dream that in the old movie, The Wizard of Oz, and those sparkly red slippers or whatever Dorothy had in front of her, I said, I keep seeing these red slippers in front of me. And I know in my mind that if I just slip one foot in and step into those shoes, I can do incredible things. Right.
Right.
But I'm
Right.
paralyzed with the fear and you're nodding your head. You get it, right? But I'm telling you, this is why I had to have you on, because I feel like we have had similar types of circumstances in our life. You with injuries and football and how you grew up, and me with other things, how I grew up. But it's all relative, right?
Right.
And we can all step into whatever it is we're supposed to do and make a difference. And I'm always telling people that. I will share with you. I know we're going all over the place, but that's all right. That's what we do. One of the titles that you hold is resiliency expert. And you know what? I'm going to claim that myself right now. I think I'm a resiliency expert based on my own story. And I will share this. That first time I walked in that lecture hall and gave that talk, the title of that talk was Resiliency in Spite of It All.
Right.
And so when I look at your story, that just screams to me resiliency. And with that, you've gained so much knowledge. I mean, when you say that chaos is the canvas, right? I mean, my God. Okay, so let's go into your NFL story. And then we're going to go into Leah and how because your playbook is, it's my new life. It's my new life. I'm serious. It's my new life strategy. What kills me is that it took me till age 45 to get it. So kudos to you and your creator for getting you there a lot sooner, because you are making an incredible difference, not only in your children's lives, and in your family, but to those that follow you. I mean, and if we had to go through it, so be it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So
it's not about us. It's not about us.
About us. It's not about us. One of the things my mom said to me when I was in chemo is she said, I feel like you're this sacrificial lamb, because I was like already organically kind of meeting people online and whatnot, and kind of encouraging them, just because I choose, like, my silly motto. I always said I had to get in my zone to go to chemo, just like Game Face for Leah, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I always said I had to get in my zone. So I went in there like dressed however I wanted. If I was in my football jersey or if I was in heels, I went in the zone. And when I came out of there, I was, knees shaking, but I went in and I chose to laugh. My motto was so silly. It was laughter and lip gloss. If I'm going to lose my hair, if I'm going to lose my eyelashes, if I'm going to look like an alien, damn it, I'm going to wear my lip gloss. Right. So I always had my lip gloss on, and I laughed when I walked by the mirror and I looked like an alien. I could cry. I could grieve my hair, but for what? It's just hair. Right.
Yeah.
So I chose laughter and lip gloss. So all the strategies that I used, not even knowing how they were getting me through it, was just survival. You have spelled out in your TED Talk about your playbook for Leah. So that's what I'm so focused on that right now, because I think I shared it on my Facebook last night. Everybody needs to watch that because we can all relate to that,
Right.
So tell us about a little bit about your NFL experience, and then when Leah was diagnosed and how that changed your entire.
Right. So my NFL experience, like you gotta realize I started playing football when I was 13. And probably around the age of 16 is when I started to really have dreams of going to the NFL, because I grew up, I love basketball. I played football for fun, and I grew up in an environment where I really didn't see people who made it to that level. So I didn't really start believing it and seeing myself capable of making it to the NFL or making it to the collegiate level until I was about 16 years old. And I had these dreams about the impact I was going to make in the NFL. But when I got to the NFL, my journey wasn't what I thought it would be. The first couple of years, I battled a lot of injuries. And my second year was probably the worst year because I had dislocated my elbow against the Detroit Lions, and I was out for 5 weeks. I made it back from that, and in 2 weeks after making it back, I played against the Steelers, and I blew out my back, and I had to get season-ending back surgery. And I was at a low point in my career at this point. And to make it matters even worse, a week after that, I got rushed to the hospital with multiple blood clots in my lungs, where I had almost died.
I remember that.
Yeah. And I was in such a dark place in my life.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
And my wife had suggested that, maybe we need to go back to church to try to build a relationship with God, because darkness is not actually a thing, but it's an absence of light. So maybe I needed to find a way to bring light back into my life. So I agreed. We went back to church. A couple of weeks after being in church, mind you, I had blood clots. They told me I may have to retire from the NFL because I have to be on blood thinners. And if I get hit playing football and a cut happens or something, I might bleed out. So if you get blood clots and you have to stay on blood thinners, you can't play sports. So they put me on blood thinners. I had a big test coming up to see if the blood thinners were working or if I had to retire from football. And I remember sitting in church that Sunday, and my test was on Wednesday, and the pastor had said somebody is about to have a miracle happen for them this week. And all I could think about when he was saying that was Wednesday. It's like, man, I didn't go through everything I went through in order for me to lose football due to these blood clots. But I didn't tell nobody in the church because I was still uncomfortable being in church. So I just kept it to myself, and I was praying that message was for me. He was prophesying over my life. That Wednesday, I went back and I took the test, and the blood clots in my lungs were completely gone. Like, the doctors were surprised that the blood thinners worked that well. So I didn't have to retire from football. So me and my wife, we took it a step further. I'm like, man, I can do this church life. Like, look how it's paying out for me. Like, this is a breeze. This is easy. So we decided to get baptized together. Now, I was naive in getting baptized because my faith was so brand new that I thought, like, once you get baptized, you give your life to God, then your life gets easier. I remember when I came up from the water, the pastor was like, things are not going to get easier. In fact, things are going to get harder because the enemy sees you trying to build a relationship with God, and he's going to try to destroy that. And I'm like, I'm on cloud nine. Right? I'm not trying to hear none of that.
I'm not trying to hear that right now.
I just got baptized.
Yeah.
But 2 months later, sure enough, I was put to the biggest test of my life because my daughter had got diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma and was given a 50% chance of surviving.
Right.
And it really tested
and she was
my
only
newfound
4.
faith. She was only 4. And it really tested my newfound faith because I was angry at God because I'm like, how did I just give my life to you? But then now
this?
My daughter's life may be at risk. And I struggled with that for a couple of weeks. But then I came to the conclusion that, maybe this wasn't God allowing this to happen to my daughter, but he exposed what was going on with my daughter because she had stage 4 cancer, which means she's been walking around with this cancer for a very long time without us knowing.
Right.
And the fact that we now know gives us an opportunity to save her life, which ultimately happened. But what I also realized is that if we didn't go through what we went through, then we wouldn't be able to do the work we're doing now.
Absolutely.
So I say all that to say, when I thought that my blood clots were healed so that I can go back to living my dreams, I truly believe my blood clots was healed because I needed the platform of being an NFL player to do the work that we were doing in the cancer community.
Yeah.
And that's when I came to the realization that it's not always about you.
Right. Right. And things happen, for us,
Yeah.
we can say to us. Yeah, they do, but it's really
Right.
for us,
Right.
all, when I was diagnosed, I had just turned 41 and 2 weeks prior to me finding my tumors, I was walking up my local mountain here. Mount Rubidoux was my form of exercise. And I was walking up and I was having this conversation with my creator saying, what am I supposed to do the last half of my life? Like, yeah, I'm working, but my kids, I started young. So my youngest is going to be 18. I'll only be 46.
Right.
I was the booster president for the basketball program at the local high school, and basketball was my life. But this can't be all there is. I got to do something else, and then I rolled over in bed and found 2 tumors. I was like, yeah, that wasn't what I had in mind, God, but I say all that to say anyone that really knows me or has heard my story is I God's honest truth. I had such a peace about it. Like I just knew that this was a diagnosis that was given to me for a specific reason. I had no idea I was going to start a nonprofit or a podcast or write a book. It wasn't about that. I just knew that it had to be for another reason. And I had these 32 basketball daughters watching me, plus my own 2, plus my son and all his friends. And 1 in 8 people are diagnosed with breast cancer. 1 in 8 women diagnosed with breast cancer. 1 in 833 men. So I knew that I felt this was a responsibility given to me to show others how to deal with a life-threatening illness. I say all that to say, I believe that all the trauma and drama that happened in my life leading up to that was prepping me. I was always a survivor because I had to be. When you speak in your talk about resiliency, and it can be learned, right? And and you can be conditioned just by the chaos in your life to be resilient, which is what I think you and I both had. And so I feel like when I was reading your story, I was like, oh, well, he had to go through all that. It's like a no-brainer to me. Like you had to go through all that so that you could not only coach your daughter into her with your playbook so that she could win and beat up cancer, as she says, right? But then also that you could take it a step further and create the still, first of all, you wrote a book, right? Still in the game. And then on top of that, now you have your Still Strong Foundation, which is exactly what I do with the Care Project. We help patients pay their everyday necessities that become luxuries so that they can just focus on cancer. So that was another thing. I was like, oh, I got to talk to him. But I mean, I really think that everything you went through really prepped you for that moment because
it did.
Right. And when you got that diagnosis for Leah, talk a little bit about that.
Rock bottom.
Right.
The best way I can explain it. Like you said, everything that I had been through over the years really helped me develop a resilient mindset. But when I got hit with the diagnosis, I hit rock bottom. And a lot of times people think because you feel weak or you feel like giving up or you hit rock bottom that you're not actually strong, that you're not capable of overcoming it. But what I have realized over time is that resilient people have weak moments.
Oh, yeah.
Where they feel like giving up, right? But the key is they don't allow those weak moments to turn into a weak mindset where they feel like they can't push through. So for about 2 weeks when Leah got diagnosed, I remember just crying all the time. Like I never left the hospital. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to retire from football. I wanted to crawl up into a ball in the corner of the hospital and just cry all my pain away. But eventually I decided to get back up and fight. And I wasn't just going to allow my daughter to lose her life without us fighting as hard as we could.
Right.
And that's exactly what we decided to do. But I realized that in order to do that, we needed to have a purpose that was bigger than us. Like I understood from my first 2 years when I got injured at Penn State, that it wasn't until I realized I had to move my family out of that environment that I was able to garner the strength to push forward. So I understood I had to give Leah's battle with cancer a purpose that was bigger than just me and her and our
Right.
family. And that's when I decided to go public with her battle with cancer, because I wanted to show people what it's like for families who are battling childhood cancer. Little did I know the story was going to take off.
Right.
Little did I know that we were going to inspire so many families who were going through the same thing we were going through. And when I saw that impact on the days that we wanted to give up, because it wasn't an easy journey. It was 2 years of ups and downs. It was 2 years of hell. It was 2 years of
Right.
pain. But we never gave up, because we understood if we did, we would be sending a message to all the other families who are struggling that it's okay to give up when things get tough.
Right.
And we weren't willing to do that.
Right.
So being able to allow myself to have those weak moments, and then giving us a purpose that was bigger than our pain, a purpose that was bigger than us, is what carried us through that battle with cancer.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I read that you talked about that really hit me hard was you said, you know, there was times during, you know, her active treatment where you would be FaceTiming with her or whatnot, and you just wanted to, you know, to cry in that moment, but that you just kept it together until you got off the phone with her, and then you'd break down. And that later you found out that she too was doing the same thing. And you said if you could, you know, go back and change something or do it a little differently, you would have shared that vulnerability with her, which is so important, right? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Leah was getting treated in Philadelphia. I was playing in Cincinnati, and I had originally planned on retiring from football because I didn't want to leave her bedside. But the next day, after I told my family that, the next day the doctor came in and told us that the treatment was going to cost north of $1 million. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in the NFL, but I don't have $1 million in my bank. I still got bills going on. I can't afford to do this. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go back to play football just so that I can have the insurance to help cover some of these expenses. And that was one of the hardest decisions I have ever had to make, to fly 500 miles away from her and not be there to protect her and hug her and kiss her and let her know that everything was going to be okay. So a lot of the time we spent on FaceTime, and I would see her hooked up to machines. I would see her hair falling off, her eyebrows falling off, just her wanting her dad to be there. And I would want to break down and cry, but I didn't, because I felt like I had to be the rock of our family, which meant I had to be strong all the time. So I would hold in my tears until we would hang up the phone, and then I would break down and cry. And while I was writing my book, I was telling my co-author this, and I looked over to my right, and Leah was looking up to me, and she was like, Dad, I was doing the same thing. Like, when we would be on the phone, I would want you to be here with me so bad, but I knew you couldn't be here. And I wanted to cry, but I would hold it together because I didn't want you to cry.
Yeah.
But as soon as we hung up the phone, I would go into the bathroom in the hospital and I would break down and cry. And it was in that moment that I realized that I had dropped the ball, because if I just would have allowed myself to be more vulnerable, it would have gave Leah the permission to be vulnerable as well. And we could have connected on a deeper level and helped each other get through those trying times. So now that's just the approach that I take with life now. If I feel like I'm going through something, then I share that with the people around me. I share that with my children. I share that with my wife, just so they know that it's okay to have those weak moments in life.
Right. But you know what? I want to say, I'm going to be your mama here for a minute. You didn't drop the ball. And if you hadn't come to that realization, you wouldn't be sharing that now, which is going to help so many people. Right. So it all happened the way it was supposed to.
Right.
It did. But I'm taking so much of your time, but we got to go over these 5 steps of your playbook, because I'm telling you, it's very similar to what I use. And I didn't even realize, you know, my own way to get through my thing. The first thing, you came up with this playbook for your daughter to get through this, for you guys as a team. The first one was believe in yourself. And you say, even if no one else does. And this doesn't just apply to cancer people. This applies to life in general, right? Believe in yourself, right? Number one.
It came from my days inside my dorm room, when I told you that teammates and doctors and coaches, I felt like, were giving up on me, especially after my second injury. And people were telling me that, you know, normally players don't make it back from those type of injuries. I realized that I had to believe in myself.
Yeah.
In order to make this work. And that's
And
the only reason why I was able to overcome it. So when Leah got diagnosed with cancer and the doctors told us it was going to be a 50% chance of her overcoming this, and a lot of people didn't think that she was going to make it, I made her wear a shirt that said future cancer survivor,
I love
because I
that.
realized that if she looked in the mirror and she already saw herself as a cancer survivor, she would do the necessary steps in order to become one. So I
Right.
had to make sure she believed in herself.
Yeah. I can't even fathom as a parent watching my child. My daughters have jokingly said to me, I better not get breast cancer, and I don't have the genetics. Mine was sporadic, but I'd be lying if I said I've never thought about it. And I look at my 22-year-old daughter and my 25-year-old daughter and my 32-year-old son, and I think, oh my God, if they ever got cancer, I don't know how I would handle it. So number 2 was give your battle or obstacle a purpose.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you just talked about that. And,
Right.
it just, okay, if this is what's going to happen, then let me use that as my motivation, if you will. Right.
Yeah.
Number 3, put on your game face.
Mhm.
I love that story about getting ready to walk into the hospital to share
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So game face really comes from sports.
Mhm.
Like you can tell when somebody, like you said, is in the zone
Yeah.
and they're ready to play. Like it happens before the game even starts. So when Leah got diagnosed with cancer and she had to go to the hospital, where she would be in the hospital for 5 days getting high dosage chemo, and then she'll have a 21-day break. Every time that we would stop at the front door of the hospital before we went in, I would stop her, tell her to turn around, and I would yell game face, and she'd be like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
And
I
I
love
keep
that.
saying it to herself.
Yeah.
And she would just have this big smile on her face as she knew she was walking into
Right.
the hospital to get chemo. And I
Yeah.
think mentally preparing herself for the battle before she actually entered the battle helped her get through the obstacles that she faced as she was going through the battle.
Yeah. And the fears, when every time I had 6 treatments of chemo, I had 3 drugs all at once. Very harsh, once every 3 weeks. So I had the 21 days off, but I was outpatient. And I would walk in there. First of all, like you said, it's prep, right? I would leave my driveway. Before I ever put my car in reverse, I would turn on some music. I'm not going to tell you what
Oh,
it
that's
was.
how we was.
Okay, so
Oh, we would blast music. We
Yeah.
would blast Rihanna, and we would dance all the way to the hospital.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. So I got myself in the zone, and then there may have been a little gangster rap somewhere in there in the parking lot. Whatever I needed in that moment is what I did.
Right.
I didn't care.
Right. Right.
One of my best friends was a sergeant at San Quentin, so she sent me down like some gear. So I'd put on like my all black stuff, but then it was like Raider colors, and I'm not a
Yeah.
Raider fan, so I was like, yeah, no, I can't wear that. But I mean, I had to get in the zone. So that's the game
Right.
face. The 4th one was have fun always, which I equated to my laughter and lip gloss story, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
you kept it fun, you danced, you put on wigs, I love
Mhm.
that. And that's another thing that really endeared you to me was my son, who's 32, now has 2 daughters. My grandbabies are like 10 or 11 months apart, and he does anything to make them laugh. And I just
Yeah.
put him in that position, like if with Leah's story, if that was my grandbaby Anthony would be doing the exact same thing you did. And
Mhm.
as a daughter, thank you for being just an amazing father to her and her best friend. And the
Thank you.
5th one, which hits me right now, in fact, I listened to it again on my way over here, was fight for 4 quarters, no matter what, no matter how hard it is, long as there's time in the clock or breath in your body, keep going. That's my synopsis of what you said. That's how
yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
every day. That's how I feel
That was
every
the
day.
point of me naming. That was the point of me naming the book "Still in the Game," because I wanted to show people, no matter what you're going through, like if you're still alive and you're reading this book, this means that you're still in the game. Like you still
Absolutely.
have an opportunity to change your life. There was a lot of ups and downs with Leah's battle with cancer. Cancer spread all over her body. And,
Right.
After the first clinical trial that she went through, the cancer had spread all over her body. And there was ever a time where I thought she was going to die. It was during that moment.
Right.
But I remembered the lesson that I learned from football, that no matter how much you're down by, no matter how much pain you're in, no matter how tired you are, you give it everything you have until the clock hits 0.
That's
And
it.
that's what I decided to do with Leah's battle with cancer. And 2 months later, she ended up going into remission. Just like when I was playing football and I had those 2-season injuries. If I would have gave up, I never would have been able to live out my dream of playing in the NFL. But because
Right.
I still had breath in my body, I continued to fight and I was able to live my dreams. So I just challenge everybody that despite what you're going through, don't ever make a permanent decision based off a temporary circumstance.
Say
If
it
you're still
again.
here, you still have a chance and you got to fight for 4 quarters.
Yep, that's it. That's it. It hit me on my way here harder because just last night I had a board meeting here at the Care Project, and we're a very small organization. We're funded on donations only, volunteer run. It's me and one assistant part time, and we've been doing this for 7 years, going on 8 years. And there's times, with our main fundraiser is like our annual gala, and we didn't get to have it last year, so. I'm looking at our budget now and I'm like, might be, hey, we had a good run, 7 years, right? And then I'm like, nope, there's still a little bit of money in the bank. There's still people that need you. We are still in the game. So I'm not quitting. And I will say that, I'm a firm believer. I say it all the time, those old cliches that when you're growing up, you think, oh, grandma, whatever, right? Or your parents, oh, they're so corny, right? All those old cliches. Guess what, people? They are true. They are true. And the lessons that I have learned from you, and yet I could have birthed you, just listening to you, these are all things that I've experienced, but you put it in such an eloquent way, just in that one talk that I watched, let alone some of the interviews I've seen. I commend you. I respect you. I'm inspired by you. I thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know I took up a lot of your time.
No, you're fine.
But I just think you are just an incredible human being, and keep doing what you're doing.
I will. You too.
What is your greatest advice for a parent whose young child is diagnosed? And again, I want to stress that Leah was stage 4. She had a 50% chance of living. She went through clinical trials. Anyone who listens to this show is probably in Cancerland with us and knows that usually if you're in a clinical trial, that means all the standard protocols didn't work for you.
Right.
So what do you say, number one, to a parent whose child was just diagnosed? What's your best advice?
Number one is to be vulnerable. Don't try to go through this battle acting like you're a rock, that nothing's bothering you. Show that vulnerability with your kid because it'll allow y'all to connect at a deeper level. Number two, accept resources, because a lot of people who are going through this type of battle, pride gets in the way of them accepting the resources. They don't want to feel like they're a burden on people's lives. But if you have a support system and they're willing to help you through this battle, accept it.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean that you can't get through this. It means that you don't have to get through this alone.
Right.
So learn to accept it. And the last one is just focus on the positives of the battle. Because for so long, I focused on the 50% chance that Leah had of dying. I forgot there was another 50% chance of her living. And when I was able to switch that perspective and focus on the 50% of her living, that's when our fight changed. Yeah. And I heard something yesterday. I had a virtual gala for our foundation yesterday. And there was a coach on there that was talking about a player from Minnesota who had osteosarcoma. And he said something that was so profound in the gala when he said, there is a survival rate for a reason.
Yeah.
That means that somebody has survived it.
Right.
So why don't you believe that you can be a part of that group that did survive it? So we got to stop focusing on the negatives. Yes, they're real.
Yeah.
The fear is real. And a lot of times people told me that you can't be fearful and have faith as if they're total opposites.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
Faith still exists with fear. Fear is real. Fear serves us. In our human body, it serves us. Yeah. And faith is the way that you know that it's not the opposite, okay, is because fear is an emotion. It's an emotional response to danger. Faith is a choice to believe in something, right? So faith can still exist when you have fear. The point is you can't allow fear to take over the driver's seat. Fear can still be in the car. Right. It can't be in the driver's seat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that, because one of the things that I do with this show is, look, I just keep it real. And I get so sick and tired of what my fellow survivor, Amy Hartle, calls battle language, right? Because one of the things that we talk about often is what not to say to us, right? And not that we realize people mean well, but sometimes they say things to us that to me are obvious, and stating the obvious to me is an insult to my intelligence. And it's just freaking annoying sometimes when all we hear is just stay positive, just do this, just do that, just do that. You know what? You think we're not already trying to do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we get it, people. We get it. Don't
Yeah.
write us. We get it. But the bottom line is you can have faith. You can, whether that's in God, whether that's in yourself, whether that's in your doctor, you choose for yourself. But the bottom line is you can have faith and still be afraid. And that's okay sometimes.
Yeah.
You just
That's
can't.
faith is the size of a mustard seed.
Yes. Yes.
Which
And I
means
always
you just have to have a little bit of faith.
tiny bit, just a drop.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
drop is all you need to keep that hope, that hope alive.
Right.
How can people reach you? I know you're everywhere. You got a book, Still in the Game. You've got your foundation, the Still Strong Foundation.
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. My name is Still in the Game, or you can visit my website, devonstill.com, and you can connect with me there. Or, me and my wife, in case anybody's interested. Yeah. Me and my wife have one of the top podcasts on relationships and marriage called Real Relationships, where, our goal is to bring the real back to relationships and really show people that marriage and relationships aren't easy like it seems to be on social media, but it's a journey full of ups and downs. And we try to give people, share our experiences and advice on how people can overcome the struggles they face in their relationships.
Right. And thank God you're doing that, because I tell you, my youngest is 22 and these kids grow up with Instagram and social media, and they think that what they see is just this fairy tale. And, I'm just telling her, like, it's not all, I don't want to be negative Nelly, but at the same time, it's like, that's not all what it's cracked up to be, you know?
Right.
So I'm going to have Olivia tune in, definitely, so she can learn from you, because she'll listen to you more than she'll listen to me. I'm just old mom.
That's the same way my daughter is.
Right. Yeah. And I'm divorced, so she's like, what can you tell me? I'm like, I can tell you how to give up and leave, but well, we will put the links to all of your stuff in the show notes. And again, I thank you so much for not thinking I'm a crazy old lady sliding in your DMs.
No, you good.
Well, you keep plugging along, and I will let you go.
All right. You have a good one.
Thank you. Take care.
Right, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. Please let us know what you think of the show by leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to share it with a friend. For more information or to connect with Carrie, go to thecareprojectinc.org.